Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to take a look at the top 10 scenarios in scenario-based games. And that basically means we'll be looking at the top 10 scenario-based games as well. I love the scenarios and how they present new objectives and challenges by twisting the rules of an existing game. So I really like games that have this as their main forefront because they're built for it. So very excited. Let's get started. My number 10 is for Legendary Marvel. This is a deck building game where you play as Marvel superheroes trying to stop a mastermind from finishing their scheme. Now, in the Legendary Revelations expansion, they introduced the scheme House of M. This is based on the comic event of the same name. And if you're watching WandaVision, WandaVision's loosely based on it as well, which is really cool. Scarlet Witch is going crazy, and you're trying to contain her powers before she, destroys the entire universe. Now, in this scenario in particular, I really like how you are able to prevent the progression of the Scarlet Witch. You're able to prevent X-Men from being KO'd by buying them, so you have to decide whether to buy them or if you're going to build your deck the way you want to and, let a couple of X-Men die, which sucks. It really escalates as you play the game, which I think is really appropriate, and as soon as she gets to a certain strength level, the scheme is going to flip over and reveal new text on the back that will change the game even more. So I really love the idea of the double-sided schemes. It adds for a lot of design space, and I really enjoy it. So that's number 10. This is the House of M for Legendary Revelations. Number 9 is for the Batman Gotham City Chronicles board game. In this, you play as heroes taking out a villain, or the villain is taking out the heroes. You can pick and choose. Now, this one in particular has a scenario called Biological Scourge. Now, this one has you fighting against a couple of villains. You're against Ra's al Ghul, and you're against Ratcatcher. And the whole premise of this is the villains are trying to infect the city with disease. Very reminiscent of the Batman Begins movie, where he's trying to put the fear gas in the water supply, which is kind of crazy. But in this one, it's just a straight-up disease, which is pretty scary. So Ra's al Ghul and Ratcatcher have teamed up, and I really like how this one presents player choice in the scenario. It's up to the heroes to take out one of the villains. They get to pick which one they want to take out, and after they take them out, it's got the cure for the disease in it. Now, in addition to that, the villains also have an objective they're trying to do. They're trying to infect rats and get them to get around the city and protect the rats from dying. So I think that's really cool how each player has their own set of objectives in this game system, and I like that there's a lot of agency and player choice. You're not stuck in one path. So I really enjoy this scenario for Batman, and that's my number 9. My number 8 is Time Stories. Time Stories has a lot of expansions, and this one in particular is the Prophecy of Dragons. This is the 3rd expansion for the system, and I think it's the coolest. Now, there is one small section in this where there's a bit of luck, and that's just something to be aware of. It's soured some people for the experience. I think that's the reason for the 7.6, but overall, the experience is incredible. So what is Time Stories? In Time Stories, you are a time agent. You go back in time in order to fix blips in the time stream. So you go back, figure out what's wrong, repair it, and then come back to the present. Now, this is the third one, so you've done it for a little while. And I can't spoil this because it's a one-and-done kind of game, but when you open the box, you see that there are 2 stacks of cards. There's one that you use normally and one that's a mystery stack, and the mystery one says open for later. And that mystery stack is what elevates this game for me. It's an unbelievable experience. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Amazing. So that's all I'm going to say for this. But Prophecy of Dragons, a blast. Make sure you play Marcy Case and Asylum before you play this one, though. So amazing. Prophecy of Dragons. Up next is number 7, Etherfields. Etherfields is a dream crawling game where you're kind of walking around this dreamscape, trying to figure out what's happened. You'll be piecing together your memories and also building up your strength via a deck building system. Now, this game really shines in its scenario design, and particularly the way they use the cards in order to build this really cool story. Now, my favorite one is the Today's Play Life scenario. Now, this one is about sock puppets. And it's really interesting. When you first join the scenario, you're at like this shopping mall, and there's a sock puppet that you have to protect from some creature. And you follow this sock puppet from scene to scene. It's a play. And it's just really fascinating how they took this great idea of like a school play being put on and they put it into a scenario, and each scenario feels very different. Once again, this also has a lot of spoilers too, but I love the different scenes that they use and just the overall story that comes out of this. You're going to be going from scene to scene, and it's really an all over the place kind of play. But the sock puppet aesthetic is hilarious, and it's a great time. So this is Etherfields, my number 7, and that's specifically today's play, Life. Number 6 is Cloudspire. Now, Cloudspire has a campaign book that has a huge amount of scenarios in it, and these scenarios are for cooperative and solo play. Now, the cooperative scenarios are amazing. So my wife and I, we've played some of the scenarios, and she loves playing the birds, and I really like playing the Narora, the energy people. So there's some good scenarios between those two, and specifically, the scenario that I want to talk about is Shared Enmity. Now, this scenario has you making some decisions at the beginning of it, where you're going to be placing the Earth-shaped tiles on the board. Now, what is Cloudspire? In this game, you're going to be doing tower defense, and you're going to be preventing the enemy from coming into your fortress, and you want to take out theirs, usually. So it's a really fascinating game. You have this big board here, and you'll be setting up on one side, they're on the other. And the cooperative mode has it 2v2, so there'll be 2 fortresses versus your 2 fortresses. So this scenario has you placing tiles on the board to adjust it right off the get-go. In addition, you also will be sharing your resources. So in order to pay for things, you have to pay source, which is the energy resource. And you have to share the source in this cooperative scenario. And I think that's really fascinating, as you have to decide who needs what fortresses you need to protect, and whenever you gather it, it goes into a communal pool. So I really like this scenario. I like the cooperation in this, and I find this game is just great in all aspects. So this is Cloudspire, fantastic scenario-based game, especially with that campaign book. It's even got some story in it that adds an overarching narrative. It's a wonderful time. So that's my number 6, Cloudspire. My number 5 is Spirit Island, a wonderful cooperative game where you play spirits that are repelling invaders from settling and blighting your island. Really awesome, and the scenario that changes it is Blitz, and I love this scenario. So in Spirit Island, one of the main concepts of the game is you have slow and fast powers. The slow powers are so strong, but they take a while to actually use. The invaders will do something before the slow powers take effect, so it takes a lot of proper planning. The fast ones are usually they're okay. They're not very powerful, but they're potent. So you use them and they activate right away, so you can immediately change something, which is really nice. You can maybe pick off a key invader or make a quick change or make some defenses. It's good. Blitz, though, changes this dynamic hugely. It turns all your slow powers into fast powers. So this is insane. You can do some amazing combos. You can feel so powerful. But in order to counteract this, the colonists that are coming in, they are going to be producing more and more colonists. So you have to be careful as to not get your island blighted, because the game is just going to be generally faster, but it's also going to be intense. So I love feeling like this super strong spirit, putting out all these slow powers and getting to use them right away. Super satisfying, super fun. That's Blitz for Spirit Island. Amazing cooperative game. That's my number 5. Number 4 is for Nemesis. So Nemesis is basically Aliens, the board game. You're trying to survive on a ship and complete an objective and then get out. Untold Stories number 2 adds a really cool mechanic where they are called comic book events. So you're going to choose a scenario, and any of these scenarios are incredible. So you'll choose a scenario, and this scenario will add a couple tokens to the board, some things you can interact with, just small stuff. But whenever you do interact with these things, you'll open up this comic book and read some passages, and it's fully illustrated, and this will affect the ship somehow. For example, you might turn on a thruster and it shifts the ship, and everything moves, everyone shifts around. You know it's coming, but everyone else might take some damage. An alien might drop off out of the vents into a room, or crazy things might happen. And it has a small storyline that is tied through these little events. I think it's done so well. I love that it adds tiny mini objectives that you can engage with or optionally ignore, and you can really customize your game with these events. So I really like this. I think it's great. It adds even more player choice to the game and even more thematic tension. Lovely game, Nemesis, especially with Untold Stories number 2, my number 4. My number 3 is for Cthulhu Death May Die. This is Fellowship and Madness, the Lost Episode 3. This is the very last Lost episode that's in the game. It's in the Unspeakable box. So this game has you playing an investigator during Lovecraftian times. You are trying to stop cultists from completing a ritual to bring out an ancient one, but they've actually already completed it. Bummer. So you have to take out the giant elder one that they've brought in and disrupt the ritual so you can actually damage it. So Fellowship and Madness is so cool because it takes place during a party. So all of the characters from the new expansion here are actually populating the map that you're playing on. So you can interact with the different people that are at the party, and you're trying to root out who is a spy, a cultist spy among them, who's really behind it. And it's so cool as you're able to go through these different party guests and find out who's innocent and who's not, and then eventually reveal the truth. And I love that it uses all the characters. It feels like a lived-in world, and I really like this scenario. I think the last 3 scenarios are the best ones. All the Lost episodes are, I think, head and above the rest. They're challenging, they're fun, and they're interesting. There's one where you have to eat crazy ice cream. There's one where they abduct cows. There's good stuff in here. So really enjoy Cthulhu Death May Die. That's my number 3. My number 2 is for Arkham Horror, the Living Card Game. Now, Arkham Horror is a wonderful cooperative game set with a very similar theme as the last one. You're investigators, but each of your campaigns that you choose is made up of scenarios that all relate around a theme. You could be in the jungle, you could be at a university, you could be in France. In this case, this is Arkham Horror, The Search for Kadath. This is going to be set during the Dream Eater cycle, so you're actually in the dream world. So this opens up a lot of cool possibilities, and Search for Kadath lets you explore those possibilities. In Search for Kadath, and there's really no big spoilers here, you're looking for Kadath, go figure. It's a land, an ancient land, and to do that, you'll be riding around on a boat. So you'll hop in a boat, and you'll go from place to place to place. And each place you go has all these really fascinating creatures, locations, ideas, interactions behind it. It's lovely. The art is great, the world building is wonderful, and it pulls a lot of different parts from this dream world mythos, and I think it's fantastic, super fascinating, super fun, and you get to choose what you want to do. And I love that. You obviously have a limited amount of time, so each play will be different, and I think that is super awesome. So that's my number 2, Search for Kadath for Arkham Horror, the card game. And my number 1 is for Marvel Champions. And this is the Once and Future Kang. So in Marvel Champions, you take a hero deck, and you're going to be, everybody takes a hero deck, and they're going to be fighting against a single bad guy. So it's a cooperative game, you'll work together, play your cards out, take out the bad guy. Kang introduces a story into a single scenario, and it does it super well. So if you don't know, Kang is a Time Lord. He is going to be coming in, he blips into the present, and you have to fight him right off the bat. Everybody's doing their best to fight this guy off, and after you defeat him the first time, he blips each of you to your own separate timeline, which is super cool. It's now just you versus a version of Kang, and each person has their own version of Kang they have to fight at. It's so cool. You could fight Rama Tut over here. You could fight Scarlet Centurion. You could fight a young Kang, the Iron Lad version. It is so fascinating, so cool. After you defeat each of these characters, you can help somebody else defeat theirs. After everyone has kind of wrapped up their battle, you go to the third act, which is so cool. It feels very cinematic. You go from place to place to place. And after you defeat all of the Kangs in the different timelines, you get back to the present, and you take on Kang again. And he, unfortunately, has brought all of your nemesis villains with him. So if you don't know about Marvel Champions, each of the decks of the heroes comes with a card that represents their nemesis villain. So this nemesis, for example, Iron Man's is Whiplash, or Spider-Man's is the Vulture, or Black Panther's is, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. Killmonger. Yeah, Black Panther's Killmonger. So each of these characters have their nemesis villain. Sometimes you'll never see them in a game. And it's really cool when they do come out, though. There's a single card that will bring out a nemesis villain. But I love the way that this pack automatically summons them. So he has assembled all of your villains from all your different timelines to fight you, to help him with further his cause with this world domination. And I think that is so cool. I love that he's got these characters just hanging out with him, that he's ready to bring out for the fight. I think it's done so well, and I love the whole cinematic nature of this. This is the best scenario in Marvel Champions for sure, and my favorite just scenario in general. This is one that I'm always going to go back to. I'm always going to have fun with. Love it. Marvel Champions, the Once and Future King, my number one for best scenario in scenario-based games. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What's your favorite scenario in a scenario-based game? Do you agree with my choices? Any ideas for lists in the future? Yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching. Side Game Strong.